I want you to look at me very closely right now. I want you to look on my face because I am currently hovering somewhere between absolute disbelief and confusion. When something is so ridiculous that you don't even laugh, you might actually start a revolution right there in your living room. Welcome back to Power and Pulse. For those of you who have been standing with us, tracking the pulse of our continent's struggle for national mastery, thank you for being here. If you are new to the family, pull up a chair. You've just walked into the room where we stop being polite and start being real. Today, we have to talk about President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. Again, I know some of you are just saying, but host, he just traveled. Give the man a break. Well, family, it's hard to give a man a break when he is busy breaking the record for the most creative excuse in the history of African leadership. Just last week, the president paid a visit to the United Kingdom and oh, he was happy. He was beaming. He was received with state honors, red carpet, and all those fancy European bells and whistles. You know how it goes, right? Our leaders love that stuff. They love the colonial pomp and circumstance. And the Europeans, they capitalize on it. They give you a gold-rimmed teacup and a nice photo op with the king. And while you're distracted by the shiny things, they walk all over you and make you sign things you people never asked for. But it's what happened behind closed doors with the UK Prime Minister that should have every Nigerian and every African questioning the very fabric of our strategic freedom. Tinubu said something baffling, so intellectually interesting that I had to check if I was watching a comedy sketch or a news report. In short, he is blaming Nigeria's blood-soaked insecurity on two things. One, the Sahel states, our brothers in Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso. Two, climate change. Yes, apparently it's not bad governance or a lack of military funding. It's the weather and our neighbors. In this documentary, we are going to dismantle this fairy tale piece by piece. We are going to ask the questions the UK Prime Minister was too polite to ask. And we are going to find out why the giant of Africa is suddenly acting like a victim of the clouds. Let's take a trip down memory lane, shall we? Because memory is the enemy of a lying politician. President Tinubu told his host in London that the Sahel states are the reason Nigeria is struggling with insecurity. Now, let's do some basic math. Let's look at the calendar. When the Boko Haram insurgency first exploded into the northern parts of Nigeria and the northern parts of Cameroon, where was the Sahel crisis? We're talking about 2008-2009. Back then, Mali was stable. Niger was relatively quiet. Burkina Faso was not in a revolutionary state. There was no Sahel alliance back then. So I have a question for the president. If the Sahel is the source of your pain, who was provoking the insecurity in 2009? Was it the ghost of the Sahara, or was it the internal failures to address radicalization, poverty, and corruption right there in your own backyard? To blame the current revolutionary government in the Sahel for a fire that Nigeria has been burning for nearly 2 decades is not just inaccurate, it's an insult to the intelligence of every Nigerian citizen. It's a way of saying, it's not my fault, I can't protect you. It's the guys next door who just got their house in order. But it gets even better. Or even worse, depending on how much patience you have left. Let's talk about the neighbors for a second. Nigeria shares a border with Cameroon, Chad, and Niger. All of these countries have faced the same Boko Haram threat. It's the same group, the same tactics, and the same rough terrain. But have you noticed something? You don't hear about these massive, horrific abductions in Cameroon or Chad the way you hear about them in Nigeria. Why is that? In Nigeria, bandits can literally walk into a village, abduct 200 or 300 or even 400 human beings. Our brothers and sisters, our children, and lead them into a valley. And then as they are popping popcorn in a microwave, they begin to water them down. They unalive our people with a casualness that should make the world stop turning. Yet, the Cameroonian army, with far fewer resources than the giant of Africa, has been able to contain these killers. You don't see 300 people being snatched in one go in northern Cameroon. Why? Because their military stays on the ground. Because they have a strategy that doesn't involve flying to London for tea every time there's a crisis. So, President Tinubu, if it's climate change causing the insecurity, is the weather in Nigeria different from the weather in Cameroon? Does the rain stop at the border? Does the heat only turn people into bandits on the Nigerian side? That's just a joke, by the way. It's a sad, strategic joke played on the lives of Nigerians. While President Tinubu is busy blaming the Sahel states, those very same countries, that is Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso, are actually busy. They aren't traveling to London to seek state honors. They are in the trenches, mounting revolutionary strategies to reclaim their native command. They have expelled the foreign forces that were helping them, but actually making things worse. They have mobilized their citizens. They have looked at the insecurity and said, this is our problem to solve, and we will solve it with our own hands. And look at the results. They are making gains. They are claiming territory. They are showing what unfettered autonomy actually looks like in practice. Meanwhile, our boss in Nigeria is busy traveling from one glamorous capital to another. He's in Paris today, London tomorrow, New York next week. He's collecting titles and handshakes while hundreds of thousands of his citizens are being unalived on a weekly, monthly, and yearly basis. It is a tale of two Africas. One Africa is fighting for its domestic mastery, and the other is begging for a seat at the master's table in Europe, blaming the wind and the neighbors for its own internal rot. Now, let's talk about this climate change excuse. This is the new favorite tool of the failing African leader whenever they can't provide security, electricity, or food. They point at the sun and say it's global warming. I can't do anything about it. Listen, we know the climate is changing. We know the desert is encroaching. But the desert has been moving for thousands of years. Does the desert tell a man to pick up an AK-47 and kidnap a schoolgirl? Does a lack of rainfall force a government to leave its borders wide open and its military underfunded? Climate change is a factor in resource competition, yes, but it is governance that decides whether that competition leads to a market or a massacre. To go to the UK, a country that has spent centuries perfecting the art of divide and rule, and tell them that Nigeria's insecurity is because of the weather, that is giving them a free pass. It's telling the British, don't worry, you don't need to help us with structural issues. Just give us some green energy grants and we'll be fine. It's an intellectual surrender. It is a refusal to look into the mirror and say, we have failed our people. Why do our leaders do this? Why does a man who leads 200 million people, the biggest economy on the continent, act so happy to be received in state honors in a country that used to be our colonial master? It's a psychological complex. It's the need for external validation. When they are in Abuja, they feel the heat of the people's anger. But when they land in London, they are treated like excellencies. They are given the red carpet. They are told they are vital partners, and they fall for it every single time. The Europeans know that African leaders are suckers for protocol. They know that if you give them a nice dinner and a grand guard of honor, they will say whatever you want them to say. They will blame the instability on the Sahel, the very nations trying to break free from the European control, because that is what the UK wants to hear. The UK doesn't want to hear that Mali is succeeding. They want to hear that the Sahel is a source of instability that needs Western intervention. And here comes Tinubu delivering that message on a silver platter. He is essentially acting as a spokesperson for the very interests that want to keep Africa divided. While this political theater is happening in London, back home in Nigeria, the popcorn is still popping. But it's not corn, it's lives. Imagine being a father in a village in Kaduna or Zamfara. You've worked your whole life to send your daughter to school, and one night the climate change comes into your house. It wears a mask, it carries a gun, and it takes your daughter away. You look to your government for help, and you hear your president from a gold-leaf room in London saying that your daughter was taken because of the Sahel states and global warming. How does that feel? It feels like betrayal. It feels like your life is a footnote in a diplomatic speech. We are losing our humanity. We are becoming desensitized to the numbers. 300 abducted here, 50 killed there. We report it like the weather. And our leaders report it like a tragedy they have no power over. But they do have the power. Nigeria has the most powerful military in West Africa on paper. They have the budget. They have the brave soldiers. What they don't have is the administrative will. They don't have a leadership that is willing to stay home and fix the house instead of traveling the world to complain about the neighbors. This is why Power and Pulse exist, because we have to call out the charade. We have to point at the emperor and say, sir, your clothes are made of excuses, and we can see right through them. The people of Sahel are waking up. They are realizing that the state owners in Europe don't put food on the table or bullets in the guns of the defenders. They are realizing that national mastery starts with looking inward. Nigeria needs to wake up too. You cannot be the giant of Africa if you are constantly leaning on the shoulder of the former colonial masters to explain your own failures. You cannot lead a continent if you are busy throwing your brothers under the bus just to please a prime minister in London. The insecurity in Nigeria is a Nigerian problem. It requires a Nigerian solution. It requires a leader who is more interested in the security of the farmer in Benue than the opinion of the king in Buckingham Palace. President Tinubu, if you are listening, or if your social media handlers are listening, the red carpet in London will be rolled up tomorrow. The state honors will be put in a box. But the insecurity in Nigeria will still be there when you land in Abuja. The Sahel states are not your enemy. Climate change is not your kidnapper. The enemy is the lack of accountability. The enemy is the corruption that drains the military's budget. The enemy is the travel first policy that leaves the country leaderless during its darkest hours. Nigeria doesn't need a traveler or an influencer. It needs a commander-in-chief. They don't need a diplomat. They need a defender of the people. Until they see a leadership that prioritizes strategic freedom over Western validation, they will continue to hear these tall tales. They will continue to hear about global warming while the villages burn. The truth is a bitter pill, but it is the only thing that will cure the sickness of our leadership. Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger are showing us that even the smallest nations can stand tall when they embrace their unfettered autonomy. They are showing us that you don't need a tea party in London to find a security strategy. Nigeria is the giant. It's time they started acting like it. It's time they stopped blaming the weather and start blaming the weakness in the palace. If you are tired of the excuses, if you are tired of the travel vlogs while the country bleeds, then I need you to do your part for the movement. Smash that like button. Let the algorithms know that the people of Africa are no longer buying the lies. Comment no more excuses below. Let's flood the section with the demand for real leadership. Subscribe to Power and Pulse. We are the only platform giving you the unvarnished truth about the battle for Africa's future. Share this video. Send it to every Nigerian, every Cameroonian, every Chadian who has been told that climate change is the reason they aren't safe. The Sahel is rising. the pulse is beating, and the truth is coming for the palace. I'm your host, Marie. This is Power and Pulse, and I will see you in the next one.